Hi guys, welcome back. So in this lesson I want to teach you how to make a snare roll, and not just a snare roll, an interesting snare roll. And this is a very, very boring version. So let's have a look at how we can make that a lot more interesting. I've got it louder at the moment than what it would be in the mix, just so you can hear it clearly. So the first thing I would do is to choose a short snare. As I've said before in this course, the choosing of samples is extremely important. Get that right and you're pretty much 80% there. So I would choose a small one. So probably not that one because it's quite long. Although of course you can just shorten the sample off in your sampler. But I went for Build Snare 04 because it was really short and punchy. And that is loaded into the sampler here. And the beauty of having it in the sampler is that we can pitch it up if we want to. So if we want to do a pitch effect, we can, which we're coming on to in a bit. The next thing to do would be to program in some 16th notes. So you obviously create a MIDI event here and set your quantize to 16s and draw in some notes. I wouldn't draw in all the way along to start with, because what I would do is draw 4 or 8 and then start messing with the velocity and then copy them over with the velocity information. Otherwise you've got to draw your velocity information all the way along. So that leads me on to my next point, actually, the importance of velocity changes or volume changes, because at the moment this is so flat and boring. That is incredibly boring. So let's see what we can do to that. So first of all, I would start programming in something like even something like that, so you get a so you get some kind of rhythm to it. But even that's just a bit boring as well. So I'll go back to the rhythm I programmed in just before I started recording this lesson. So I've got 1 full volume, then 2 down, then 1 up, then 2 down, then 1 up, then 1 down, then 1 up. You can see that it's a little bit random, but it just seemed to work. So as long as you're changing your velocities, that's the main thing. So you can hear it sort of it's much better than which is what I had a second ago. And then that 2-bar loop repeats around. Copy those 2 bars over. So we've got basically a 2-bar rhythmic pattern here. And maybe for the last section, I will just have this slightly more energetic version for this last 2 bars. You could possibly try the Tremelo plugin. I'm sure if Cubase has got a Tremelo plugin, then other DAWs will have it as well. So it should be under modulation. Tremelo. So this will obviously increase and decrease the volume. Let's get a sync going. So you can really hear that dipping. I'm just making it obvious to start with. So you've got some spatial or panning information here as well, so that's handy. Just turn it off for a second though. And that's the depth of the volume changes. So that's a really, really good plugin, which we could use, and a bit of panning as well. Quite like that actually, but we'll turn it off for now. That saves me loading up the auto pan plugin later on. We've touched upon swing before in previous lessons, but it's really, really important to swing these as well as the velocity changes. So we'll just highlight them all by Control All or Command All. And what I would do is apply auto quantize and swing it up to about 30%. You'll see these grid lines move. I'm actually just going to type in 30. You'll see the grid lines move. It's on auto quantize and you'll hear the difference. So it's got so much more rhythm to it now. And we'll stick that back in and we're sort of getting there. So we've got a few more things to do to make this a bit more interesting, but we've certainly got a bit of rhythm there now. I mean, that's 1,000 times better than what we started with. So the next thing I would do, very importantly, is to automate the volume. We'll be automating a few things. So stick a point in there, or two. Assuming you've got stuff after this, the rest of your track, I would always stick in a point there so you don't affect what's after this section. And I would bring this in gently, that's all you've got to do. So maybe start really low, and maybe just bring this down a touch. So maybe it just needs to come up a little bit more, and you can change whether it starts quickly or starts slowly by bending it. So that's volume automation, very, very important in a build snare, because you don't want it just suddenly coming in full blast out of nowhere. That just sounds a bit janky. Another thing you can do is low pass filter automation. So I would turn on the high cut, which is the same thing as a low pass, and we can just filter this off and open up the filter as we go. I'm going to do it manually, but of course you can just press right over here and record this in if you want. Let's solo this to make it easier. So you could record that in automation. Another thing you could do is you could do a filter sweep, so you could get a relatively thin cue here, and it's kind of a similar thing. That's probably good for more, harder genres. You can use the morph filter, which is in Cubase. Most DAWs come with these filter plugins. So we just switch it on, and you just mess around with this here. All of this can be recorded in, of course, and just modified afterwards. So that's EQ and filter sweeps. So the next thing I would consider is pitch automation, or cranking up or down the pitch. So maybe when we get in towards the end of this loop, we can start pitching up the snares. And there's three main ways to do this. So you can start pitching up these notes like this. This method is just a tiny bit janky because you're just going up one semitone each time. So that could be handy. Another way to do it, because we're in a sampler track here, just open up the low zone. You can press right here and record your information, so either turning up the fine tune or turning up the semitones here. So that's another way of doing it. And the third way of doing it is to change the velocity information, change it to pitch bend. And then in Cubase, you must change this to 12 semitones or 24, because default is only 2 semitones, so it doesn't bend very much. That's just a Cubase thing. So you would get your draw tool or line tool and do something like this, and draw in some pitch bend information. So you can hear that pitch bending up there. And all these things are just designed to increase the energy as the time goes on. So the pitch bend up and the loudness, all building up to a nice big energetic section of your track here, the drop or the chorus. So you could automate reverb. We haven't done that yet. So let's go to send, go to reverb, turn it right down. Let's just go to this window here, it's a bit easier. And you could turn on your right and just automate this. So you get the idea there. Let's just turn off right and go into that. So again, probably easy just to choose your line tool. And let's just have a listen to that. You could automate your trash plugin or your bit crusher plugin. Let's just see what we can do with that. So you've got to be careful on trash because there's some in here obviously that are just way too much. But we could automate the dry on this one up to maybe about halfway. Let's just have a listen to that. These kind of effects are actually really good in things like techno, where you have really, really long build-ups and you have really sort of long automation curves, or you could do the same with Bit Crusher, that kind of thing. So that's it really. Let's just have one last look at it. Probably just turn this reverb down a bit. Let's just have a listen to it. Turn up the volume a touch. So yeah, the reverb's a bit much. And what I would also do here is maybe just double up these last few. So you'd need to just set the grid a bit smaller and double them up. That's quite nice with the rhythm actually, but you could also just take off the swing perhaps on this one and just have them as standard. And maybe just have the notes a bit more fixed in velocity. So we go to MIDI functions, fixed velocity. Maybe just have a bit of a tilt in volume. So let's just have a listen to that. So hopefully you get the idea. Anyways, tons of stuff you can do to your boring 16th notes. Anyway, guys, that's how to program in a snare roll and make it interesting. I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.